Wisdom 2.0 started 10 years ago with a question. How do we live mindfully and wisely in a technology age? We knew technology was going to advance and develop, but it was less certain. Would wisdom prevail? Several hundred people gathered in Silicon Valley in 2010. The next year, we expanded, then expanded again and again. Several thousand people from over 25 countries have attended. They work in healthcare, technology, education, banking, and more. What binds us, however, is not our occupation, or our clothes, or our political affiliation. What binds us is our commitment to living a life of purpose and meaning. Some people come for the talks, others for the community. For many, it is the place they feel most at home. We come together to map a course for how we can live wisely in an ever-changing digital world. Thank you for joining us on this journey and for celebrating 10 years with Wisdom 2.0.
Thank you for coming to Wisdom 2.0. Please turn off your cell phones and turn on your hearts. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alea Eastman. I am a senior at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and I'm so grateful to be able to be here today, and I just want to acknowledge all of us from the Parkland community for being here this weekend. And you'll be able to hear more from us tomorrow, and we're just so happy to be able to spread our love and healing with you guys this weekend. But I just want to spread some more positivity today, and I want all of you guys to look at one another and just introduce yourselves. Tell them how you feel today, where you're coming from, you know, how many kids you have, what do, how many kids you want. Just introduce yourselves to one another and just be positive because we're in this space together, so yeah. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Yay. So my name is Soren, and I want to welcome you to Wisdom 2.0. I've been coming every year for 10 years.
It's impressive.
It's impressive.
Really. I actually didn't get to come to the very first Wisdom 2.0, but I met Soren right after while I was working at Twitter.
And your name is?
And my name is Michelle. And Ev's going to be here in a little while. The circle just keeps on going round and round. We're so happy you're here. Thank you for being with us.
So we want to go through a few logistics, but I also really want to talk about the atmosphere or the field that we want to create here at the conference the next couple days. You know, some people talk about what's the secret sauce of any event. So, you know, with TED, it might be like, oh, there's amazing speakers, or at some other event, it's, oh, there's great networking opportunities. And for me, the secret sauce of Wisdom 2.0 has always been you. It's always been the community, and it's been the people, and it's been the quality of awareness and attention that you bring. And for me, the greatest thing that I can hear, a compliment about Wisdom 2.0 I can hear, is that it has a lot of heart. And that's really what we try to do. But it's one thing to create big stages and screens and thises and that's. That's pretty easy to do. With enough time and money, you can create a big event. But heartfulness, you can't buy that. You can't figure that out. That is something that has to come from inside us. So I want to invite us all to practice heartfulness and practice presence while you're here with us for the next couple days. And it's so different as a speaker to walk out here and to see 2,000 people on their cell phones, which I know is needed sometimes. And it's quite different to walk out and see 2,000 people actually present and ready and open and ready to receive. And the speakers, the quality of the talks and the quality of the presentations will be that much greater by our presence. So together we create a particular field, and in that field we want to support attention, awareness, love. So we encourage you, if you notice yourself getting distracted or you notice your mind kind of racing, see if you can just come back to this present moment. And I love my cell phone as much as the next person, but to whatever extent we can stay off our phones and just really focus on human connection over the next few days, my sense is you'll have a much better, more powerful experience. The special counsel says in the spirit of Wisdom 2.0, he's promised not to release the report this weekend. So we don't need to be checking the news constantly to see what's going on. We can just relax, stay with each other, be present with each other, and enjoy each other.
Yeah, and the most magical part about this conference is the community, and it's all of you and the connections that are made. And so some of you have been here for 10 years. I mean, how many people have been here for 5+ years? Look around, there's a lot of you. How many people for 3+ years? A lot of you. How many people, is it their first time here?
Wow.
Welcome.
And how many people don't really know where they are? Is anybody? Okay.
Yeah. Welcome. So introduce yourselves, connect, ask beyond the where do you work, what do you do, right? Like, how do you feel? Do a little mood check. And really just connect in, because it is this community that is so special. One of the things Soren and I love most about the conference is hearing the stories year after year after year about how people became friends, how they worked together, how they started organizations, right? So that's what this community is all about. And this doesn't happen without all of you.
And inevitably, we come often with some kind of agenda, like, oh, I'm going to meet my next business partner, or I'm going to meet XYZ. And our experience is to whatever extent you can drop whatever agenda you had coming in, and you can just focus on human connection and just focus on really meeting and receiving somebody, your experience here will be that much greater. So we want to go over a few of the logistics at the conference. So tonight, this is our main hall. And this is where everything's happening tonight. Tomorrow, we open up a lot of different spaces. So behind us in this next room is our village, and we have our friends from Fetzer who will be hosting a lounge there. And it's also where the Q&A will happen. So often after a talk, some of the speakers will go behind this wall, and there'll be a Q&A with a couple hundred people, so you get to ask questions. So this is the village that holds the Fetzer Lounge and the Q&A. And if you walk downstairs, near the registration, we have a chill lounge. So if you're need some space and just want to chill, you can go into the chill lounge. That's also where our friends at Google are helping us put together a movement space with Qigong and dance and yoga and different things. And if you go further down that aisle, we have hosted conversations. Our friends at the Strozzi Institute are offering an embodiment lounge. We have our breakout space. And also our friends at Calm are bringing us a practice room where you'll have meditations all day long. So just about every hour there'll be a meditation. So you can come and you can do breakouts, you can do Q&As, you can do conversations, you can just spend all day in the meditation lounge if you want. So that's just a rough view of all the different spaces.
And you won't remember any of that. So we've got an app that we'll share a little video in a little bit that hopefully most of you have downloaded. And there are volunteers in blue t-shirts all over, so please just ask if you're wondering where something is. We want you to remember to stop and take a selfie in front of this magnificent rose photo wall. And just a little fun fact, Soren and his wife Liz had one at their wedding, and it was really beautiful. So we hope that you can stop and take some pictures there. And to ensure safety of all of our guests, there are hotel security personnel stationed both inside and outside of the hotel. If you need support in any way, please just reach out to them. Okay. And this year we do have an app, as I mentioned. It has the schedule as well as the map, and it has everything you could possibly need. And you can't, mental note, you can't download it. Is that still true? You can't download it directly from the App Store. Go to, I don't know if that's still true.
There's a video.
It might have been an old little leftover. Wisdom2conference.com/app.
The conference app is a bit different
They're shutting
this
me
year,
up.
and we thought it might help to walk you through some of its features. To download the app, go to wisdom2conference.com/app. From this page, you will be able to choose to download the Attendify app, and it will open in your app store. Download and let the app install. From the next screen, you'll type Wisdom into the search bar, and the event should auto-populate in the list. Click the conference. From here, you will choose to join this event, and it will prompt you to create an account. Follow the steps and make sure you add a picture and your name so that people can recognize you. Keep in mind that any information you add to the app is visible to all users of the app, so only share the content you are comfortable making public. After you set up your account, you will be logged into the event app. The activity stream is a shared real-time experience of all the conference attendees. The app menu is located in the top left corner of the app. The app provides the most accurate and up-to-date schedule, map, and list of speakers, so if something changes in the schedule, it will be reflected here first. Most of the app is pretty straightforward, so let's focus on a couple nice features that will improve your conference experience. Under People, you're able to see your fellow attendees, and you have the ability to favorite, private message, and find ways to connect. The star icon is something you will see throughout the app and will allow you to easily narrow down people's sessions and speakers you have favorited. Under Schedule, you can use the filter icon to show sessions by stages or what the app refers to as tracks. For the schedule, the star icon will also prompt you to set up an alarm to remind you about favorited sessions. If you really enjoyed one of the speakers, you have the ability to see all of their upcoming sessions by clicking on their name. If you want to see a list of all of the sessions, speakers, and people you have favorited, just click on the menu and go to Favorites and Notes. Also, from your home screen, if you're struggling to find your app, it is called the Attendify app, and the icon should look like this. We're excited to have an app that will help you get the most out of the conference. But remember, we're here to connect with each other, not our devices. So don't forget to put your phone down and favorite someone in real life.
That was great. So if you haven't turned down your cell phone like Taj had asked in the beginning, now's the time. You don't want to be the person at the mindfulness conference with your phone ringing. Be a little awkward. And our time together is short, so we're only going to be reading a few sentences from each of our amazing speakers' bios. So please go to the app or the website to learn more about them, and let's begin with the programming. So our first session is with Ev Williams and David Seamus. Ev is the founder and CEO at Medium. He spoke for us at Wisdom 2.0 7 years ago. We're so excited to have him back. Previously, he co-founded Blogger, which was acquired by Google in 2003, and Twitter, where he was CEO and now serves on the board of directors. In 2014, Ev co-founded Obvious Ventures to focus on a world-positive approach to investing. Ev grew up on a farm in Clarks, Nebraska, which I'm guessing you're going to hear a little more about, and has been recognized in one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. He lives in San Francisco with his wife and 2 sons, Miles and Owen. David Seamus is the CEO of the Obama Foundation. David joined the Obama administration in 2009 as a deputy assistant to the president. Following the re-election, he returned to the White House as assistant to the president and director of the Office of Political Strategy and Outreach. He lives in Chicago with his wife, Shauna, and their daughters, Peyton and Rowan. And we're happy to welcome them to the stage. Please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody, and good evening. It's a real pleasure to be here with Ev to kick off Wisdom 2.0.
It's an honor.
And as I was thinking about how to begin, I came across this story as I was watching someone deliver a commencement address at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln.
Like you do.
Kind of. And there was a reference to a place called the Conestoga Mall in Grand Island, Nebraska. So, Ev, I want you to weave in for me why that place is significant to you, and then you find a blogger, Twitter, and now Medium. Were you always this way? I mean, did you like build stuff with mom and dad on the farm in Clark's? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I grew up literally on a farm in the middle of the cornfields, outside a town of 400 people, going to school in a class of 12 to 14 people, pre-internet. And so I was kind of forced to build things to entertain myself. But I seemed to be wired that way, so I was always building whatever. From a young age, it was Legos and blocks, and as I got older, it was in the shop trying to build bikes and skateboards. Yeah. Most of the things I tried to build were entirely impractical, and I had no idea what I was doing. I tried to build a car because I really wanted to get off the farm and go to town. I thought somehow with all these tractor parts and motors and things, I should be able to build a car. That didn't work. But as I got older, it turned a little bit more virtual, my creations. Eventually I learned to program in school. I was very fortunate that we had a mandatory programming class in rural Nebraska. Before that, I really wanted to make video games, so I drew them on paper, and I designed a lot of video games on paper that were pretty cool, I think. As I got older and after I had learned to program, getting back to the Conestoga Mall. So Grand Island, I'm sure there are a lot of people who know the geography of Nebraska really well here, but Grand Island is...
Give it up.
Yeah. It's like the third biggest city in Nebraska. It was about 35 miles from where I grew up. So that's where we would go. That's where they had a mall and a movie theater and a roller skating rink. So it was in high school there I would go to the newsstand. I love bookstores and I love newsstands. And I found around that age that was sort of the outlet to the world. Again, pre-internet, wanting to learn things, wanting to expand my ideas and knowledge, I found, oh, you can read things, and they will tell you what's going on in the rest of the world, and that was fascinating to me. So I spent a lot of time in bookstores, in the mall, in the newsstand, and the story I told in this that you're referring to is one day I went to this mall, and there was this magazine I hadn't seen before, and I picked it up, and it was a window into the future. And it was really a window into San Francisco in the early 90s that was building the future. And that was Wired magazine, and it was the second issue of Wired magazine, and I picked that up, and it had these neon colors and this funky type, and they were using this terminology like I mostly didn't understand, but it was written in a way that assumed you were part of the club. And I was like, damn, I want to be part of this club. This is what I want to, this is where I want to be.
Yeah. And that article that you referenced was about this wonderful idea of essentially connecting human brains and ideas. And the way you talked about it was just growing up on a farm where you needed to have an outlet to have your idea for someone else and to share and to connect. How did that then turn into Blogger and then Twitter and now Medium?
Yeah, so that idea captivated me, this idea of sharing knowledge and ideas and connecting and getting, it was the amplification of that notion that you could, by reading, you could expand your worldview and times infinite. and instantaneous. And so I already had an affinity for computers, but they weren't very connected. So I signed up for online services and so forth. But the short version is I've been trying to connect brains ever since. There was a few things in the middle, but that's always what excited me about the internet, is that idea of connecting brains. And we take a lot of that for granted now, that you can have a thought and put it on the internet, and most of the rest of the world, at least a good part of the world, has access to that. I think I almost still get chills when thinking about the reality of that, which wasn't true when we were born, and now it's true, and nothing is the same because of that. And so most of my companies, in fact, all of them have really been about trying to make that better.
Yeah. And you described it as essentially, imagine if we built this giant idea-sharing machine. But it was also informed by the notion that if there were people out there sharing their good ideas, they would overwhelm the bad ideas. They would win the day.
That was the idea.
That was the idea. Tell me when, what was the moment or moments where the idea ran into the reality?
I'm still not sure what the reality is.
Yeah.
I know it's more complicated than I originally thought. Which was that. It was, well, once anyone can share their thoughts, I'm still an optimist by nature and an optimist about human nature. And so I think we may get there. But for most of my career, and I think for a lot of us technologists, the assumption was good things would happen. And overwhelmingly good things would happen. Of course, we knew some bad things would happen, and within the last few years, I think it's been demonstrated that we may have underestimated the bad things, or I don't think we overestimated the good things. I think we underestimated the bad things. There's just more things. And I think we were maybe thought the overwhelmingly good things would happen a little sooner. It's a lot messier than we thought, than I thought. Yeah, so I don't know if there's a moment, but it's been an accumulation of data.
There was a profile of you in 2017 or 18 by the New York Times, and the headline, as there want to be, was "The Internet is broken."
That's true.
And essentially then it was a description of how you, Ev Williams, especially via Medium, are beginning to think about perhaps not fixing it, but to balance it off a little bit. Talk a little bit about that.
We're trying. So I always hesitate when this is referenced because I don't want to set myself up as trying to fix the internet. That seems that seems hard. And we're a tiny part of the internet, even what we're working on. What you described, one vision of the internet is a giant idea exchange machine. It's also a convenience store and many other things that are kind of unrelated. So I always think it's so woven throughout society. But the thing that I go back to is this notion of making useful things. So going back to being an optimist, I mean, obviously we're dealing with an unprecedented number of catastrophes and near catastrophes in the world right now. And things are more uncertain than I'm sure they've ever been. And it's really scary. And I think there are solutions, or at least good ideas, to most problems, whether they be personal or global. It's sort of like that William Gibson quote that the future's already here and just not evenly distributed. I believe the solution is here and just not evenly distributed. There are great ideas and great knowledge and great wisdom that exists in the world in someone's mind that can help other people through almost anything. And the internet allows that to be exchanged. And so when I say the internet is broken, I mean, that again was why I was excited about it. It's broken at that function. Like that function it's gotten worse over time, not better, because we've become, for a whole bunch of reasons, and it's systemic. And the problem I focus on is what information gets put out in the world and how does it get disseminated and in front of people and what takes people's attention, which is a good thing to be talking about at this conference. It's all about attention and where we spend our attention. And our attention has been hijacked. And it's primarily been hijacked by advertising-driven business models that are not driven to make us more wise. That's not their purpose. And that determines, to a large extent, what propagates up in our feeds and on our screens, and that's this massive, massive system that is working at cross purposes with what most of us want and need.
So, when you think about your, let's begin with your meditation practice, your mindfulness practice. And then I want to come back to, because what you just described is in some ways the antithesis. It is the way the system is set up right now. It is the opposite in every single way of meditation and a practice rooted in mindfulness. Where did you come to mindfulness? Tell us a little bit about that first.
So, the original introduction was probably 20-some years ago. There's a period after my first company failed that I went back to the farm and lived with my dad, and my parents had gotten divorced, and he, I have no idea how, but was introduced to Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra, like tapes.
In Clarks, Nebraska.
In Clarks, Nebraska. And he's a farmer, Nebraskan farmer dude, and he was listening to these tapes, and he was like, "Oh, these are pretty cool," and meditating. And I was like, "I'll listen," and I thought they were pretty cool too. And I was like, that was really my introduction, was these cassette tapes. And I listened to them quite a bit. And I didn't really develop a formal practice, but it was a lot of related ideas. And then, and I kind of went back to it for many years, probably a decade or more, where I would, especially in times of stress or in times of just various times throughout my life, where I would meditate in the way that I learned how through those, and I found it powerful and useful. And then, but I didn't develop a practice until about 5 or 6 years ago, when an advisor at Medium, actually, we had an offsite, and we had a guide there who did some meditations, and I was like, oh. And I think I was just in a when the student is ready sort of mode.
Right.
And that struck me pretty profoundly, and I said, I need to keep doing this. How do I keep doing this? How do I fit this into my life? And I think for so many of us, that's the hard question. It's very practical, like, how do I actually do it? What time of day, when, where, is there a room in my house where and so I thought, what would be a good forcing function is if I had someone come to work. And so through this same connection, we're super fortunate to have Will Kabat-Zinn come into our work and start working with us there. And I started doing it at work, and that changed it. That got the habit going, and then have been doing it pretty regularly ever since. And it's been just profound.
So now tying it back to the way you just described, essentially an industry in many ways that is an attention-grabbing industry. That is the antithesis of what you just described. As someone who has built amazing companies, how do you see mindfulness as a solution to or integrated into actual product or product design to try to bring us away from the lack of attention to an awareness and being present and discerning. Because you can attack it now, you've seen both sides. So how do you think about this?
I look at a couple different layers of it. One is trying to just work myself and on my practice and mindfulness and being, just to make better decisions and to get less caught up in the urgency in the day-to-day that is so easy to get caught up in when you're building things and when there's pressure and the expectations are high. And part of that is about, I think for me, mindfulness has helped me take a much longer view on things. And when I look back at companies or products that I've worked on, like a lot of my worst decisions have come out of fear. And I think there's a lot of well-meaning people who build things or in Silicon Valley who are scared that they will fail, and therefore they do things that they might not feel are the best possible thing for, say, for their customers or whoever is using their thing. And analogy I like to use is just thinking about food and information and how we all know if there's a bunch of junk food in front of us, and especially at the end of a long day and our defenses are down, we're very likely to consume that. And we're not necessarily going to feel good about it. And if we felt that way every time, if we went to a particular place, we may consume a lot of their food until we stop going. And so the way I relate that back to the products we build in these information services is you can build something that's incredibly addictive, but people generally know better. I mean, everyone goes through their process of you get out of the house and you can buy the ho-hos with your own dime, and then you can OD on those, and then you go like, oh, maybe I don't want to live with that. I feel like as a society, is this making sense still? Yeah. The analogy. So as a society,
ho-hos connect people like crazy.
Is Ho-Ho a sponsor of the company? We're sort of getting over the sugar high that these information systems have injected into our brains, and we're still we can still fall into the same traps, just like if you put the junk food in front of us, but we can also know better. And so there's a period where it appeals to our base instincts, and it gets very good at exploiting our survival instincts of fear and novelty and FOMO. And when you don't know better, then you're completely wrapped up in that. And then as you start to know better, which mindfulness is, of course, helpful for, then you can still say, like, oh, I'm being pulled into that, but it's not actually how I want to live or how I want to work. And I feel like just as a lot of the world has gotten more healthy, and there's a ton of world, I don't think it's going to be simple. I don't think there's going to be this major transformation of society where, like, oh, we don't want, cheap, superficial content, but I do think there's more and more people who are going to consciously make the choice that actually I want something healthier, I want something better, I want something better for me and for the world. And as that happens, there's going to be opportunities open up for people who aren't appealing to the base instincts to really build businesses and to build healthier products.
Oh, that's great. And hopeful. So as we wrap up our time here, this is the 10th anniversary of Wisdom. You came 7 years ago, and there are a couple of thousand people here. And I think it's a testament to what you just described as the hunger and the need of the moment right now, to find an alternative to this immersive screen that can dominate a person's life every day. Tell us about where you see the mindfulness movement going here in the country, as you've seen the growth over the past 10 years?
I think it's very exciting. I mean, I don't have a great view on the whole movement or the whole country, but first of all, huge congrats to Soren and team for the 10 years. That's incredible. And the success has been, yeah. It's very gratifying and exciting to see this sort of turnout and this sort of energy. And my own experience in Silicon Valley is, and among other circles, that the expectation, like even in the short time since I spoke here last, just the mainstreamness of conversations around meditation and mindfulness has been pretty dramatic. I mean, we were a little bit weird when we started having meditation in the office 5 or 6 years ago, or if I was at an event or speaking or press or anything and mention, or even just at a dinner party mention meditation, be like, are they going to think, maybe that's still a little bit edgy or weird? And now I don't feel any of that at all. My expectation amongst certain crowds and people I know is, yeah, of course you meditate. What, you don't meditate? That'd be
right.
It's kind of weirdo over here. Doesn't meditate.
In a very non-judgmental way.
Yeah. David meditates, by the way.
In a very judgmental way.
Yeah. He's cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ev Williams.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now we're excited to welcome to the stage mindfulness teachers Jack Kornfeld and Trudy Goodman Cornfield. If you don't know, they're married, but don't tell anyone. Trudy is the founding teacher of Insight LA in Los Angeles, the first center to combine training in Buddhist insight meditation and non-sectarian mindfulness and compassion practices. Jack trained as a Buddhist monk in the monasteries of Thailand, India, and Burma. He's taught meditation internationally since 1974 and is one of the key teachers to introduce Buddhist mindfulness practice to the West. I'm guessing some of you might have heard of him. He's also a founding teacher of the Spirit Rock Center in Woodacre, California, where he currently lives and teaches. And Jack, a little fun fact, Jack has been with us every year but one. So please welcome them to the stage.
Bell, actually. Ms. Trudy? Hi, Trudy.
Hey, Jack. I actually haven't seen him for quite a while.
It's been a few weeks. How are you, dear?
Yeah.
She was just teaching with Will Kabat-Zinn, since he was just mentioned.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Mexico.
it is a treat to be back at Wisdom 2.0 and to be able to speak with you. And we have about 20 minutes. I was going to go first and do some more formal teaching, and then we'll do a bit of a dialogue, and maybe I'll interview Trudy. What's for dinner tomorrow, stuff like that, you know. So taking a breath, let's just take a few moments just to settle and be here. It's wonderful to talk about meditation, and then let's have an invitational moment to be present. Tune in. Good. So here we are. In the past few years that I've been teaching, Trudy as well, I've experienced in groups a growing cultural anxiety that I'm sure many of you are aware of. It's the anxiety about things that are problematic in the world, the climate change and the continuing racism and the crazy politics and the problems in the technology world that Ev was just talking about that became a revelation as things unfolded. And I look at all this, and I also kind of look through the eyes of my new 3-month-old first grandson and think, okay, what is he going to be living in, and how is this going? And I know that there's been a 30% increase in teen suicide in the last few years. I say it with a kind of deep sadness. And part of it is because the teens, and many, are afraid that we can't make a difference. When we understand mindfulness, and I want to use a synonym for it tonight, loving awareness, mindfulness as loving awareness, then we can also begin to understand that it has two dimensions that both serve us very well. The first dimension is the inner dimension. It's really clear to all who look that no amount of technology, internet, supercomputers, nanotechnology, biotechnology, space technology, all the things that we're remarkably developing is going to stop continuing warfare and climate disruption and climate change and racism and conflict and economic injustice. Because those difficulties have their roots in the human heart. As one of the chairmen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said at one point, we're a nation of nuclear giants and ethical infants. And so the real question for us as human beings is, can we now match the outer technology with the development of heart and with the development of connection and interbeing and understanding? And to do this requires us to quiet the mind, open the heart, to tend our inner life. How many of you have a meditation practice, just to know? Oh, many, many of you. And then there's a few virgins, even in San Francisco. It's shocking, shocking. So meditation is pretty straightforward, mindfulness, loving awareness. It's called getting real, as my friend Sharon Salzberg says. You sit down and you let yourself experience your tears and longing and love and healing and connection, and you bring a loving awareness to the whole tainted glory of your humanity, this human incarnation with vulnerability and tenderness and beauty and all the things that are a part of it. And as you do, you expand what's called the window of tolerance in neuroscience. So here's James Baldwin. You can tolerate your own fear and pain. James Baldwin says, I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate and ignorance so stubbornly is because they sense that once hate is gone, they'll be forced to deal with their own pain. And as a culture, if we can't bear our vulnerability or the fact that everything's changing or what's going to happen economically, or so, then we blame it on the migrants or the immigrants or the Muslims or the LGBT or the brown people or yellow or whoever, or somebody, or the communists. They were the enemy du jour when I was a kid, and now they're coming back around, you know. But we project it out because we can't bear our humanity. So to sit is to develop this window of tolerance, not to become a good breather, but to develop a steady and trusting heart. You understand that. And then, they say in Zen there are only two things. You sit and you sweep the garden, and it doesn't matter how big the garden is. So you quiet the mind, and you get a sense that you're not just this separate body of fear, this separate self, but as you open, you sense your connection with all things, and you become more and more trusting that you are loving awareness that's part of the fabric of life. Gandhi took 1 day a week in silence. And people would come and say, Gandhiji, There's hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets, you know, people are getting killed. We have to do something. And he'd say, this is Thursday, it's my quiet day. I have to get quiet in the middle of it all. And then he'd come out of that stillness and say, all right, how do we dismantle the British Empire or get freedom for people around the world? So this is important for you to understand. Mindfulness is a compound word, sati sampajanya, which means mindful presence is the first part, and the second part is mindful response, to be able to get up and sweep the garden of the world from a very different place. And the question is how to do this, how to be an activist with heart and not burn out. So Gary Snyder, one of our greatest environmentalists, Pulitzer Prize winner, you know, in his 80s now, was interviewed by my colleague Wes Nisker recently. Said, Gary, you see the oceans rising, all the difficulties in the world ecologically. What advice do you have now after all 50 years as an environmentalist? And he said, don't feel guilty. If you want to save it, don't save it out of guilt or anger or despair or dismay. Save it because you love it. That's the only power that's actually going to make a difference. It's the power that has mothers lift their cars off babies. And trust, as you learn to be mindful in your own life, that the heart is big enough to include both what's personal and what's collective, that all of that can be held in the great heart of compassion that you find with this loving awareness. And then, from that place of presence, you act in a different way, with steadiness and love. Cornel West says, justice is what love looks like in public. If you want to develop love, there's these dimensions. And so it's important to understand that mindfulness and loving awareness is not a grim duty. Okay, you do your therapy and you go to the gym and you do your diet and stuff, and, you know, it's worked a little bit. But it's not about, you know, perfecting yourself. It's perfecting your love. It's not a grim duty, but a radical act of love and creativity and joy. And I'm thinking that we should actually have Wisdom 2.0 and Burning Man move to Washington, D.C. to bring a little... I was in the airport with my daughter, who's a young asylum lawyer whose work is to help people whose lives are in danger around the world get asylum. And we were at the airport for those demonstrations when the president's ban against people coming from those predominantly Muslim countries. And there were all these young lawyers, many more young lawyers than there were people who were locked up. So they were helping everybody else. But anyway, all the people with their signs and kind of doing their thing. And the place that was most moving, we were at one of the gates. There were 400 people out of 2,000 there. And in the middle of chanting, no ban, no fear, refugees are welcome here, and all of that, was a jazz band, New Orleans. So we'd be chanting, no ban, no fear, and the drummer would kick in with a nice rhythm, and then the trumpet would lay a riff on top, and the sax would come in, and pretty soon we'd go, no ban, no fear, refugees welcome. And the whole thing became a song. The guards were smiling. The cops were like, yeah, this is the kind of demonstration we want. Because it was artful. It wasn't aggressive, but at the same time, we were there. And this is Molly Ivins, a great activist and writer from Texas. She wrote a book about our former George W. Bush president called Shrub. Anyway. She says, so keep on fighting for freedom and justice, beloveds, but don't forget to have fun doing it. Be outrageous, rejoice in all the oddities that freedom can produce, and when you get through celebrating the sheer joy of a good battle, be sure to tell those who came afterward how much fun it was. Because this, in a way, is the secret, is that it's not a grim duty, but rather it's finding joy in yourself. When you go to a refugee camp, people don't want you to be depressed. It just doesn't help them, you know. It's finding in yourself, as you quiet the mind and tend your heart, that outpouring of love and your particular seeds that you want to water. And I was in D.C. for March for Our Lives last year, 800,000 people up Pennsylvania Avenue. A poem I'll read to you about it. This is from Alison Luderman, my friend. I see her on TV screaming into the microphone. Her head is shaved and she's beautiful and 17 and her high school was just shot up. And she's my daughter, the one I never had, and yours and everyone's daughter. And she's her own woman in the fullness of her young fire, calling bullshit on politicians who take money from the gun makers. And tears rain down her face. And those who held power are baffled to face this new breed of young woman, not silky or compliant. She cries, but she doesn't stop. And I'm 3,000 miles away thinking how Neruda said, the blood of the children ran through the streets without fuss, like children's blood. Only now she is, they are raising a fuss, shouting down the walls of Jericho. And it's not that we road-weary elders have been given the all clear exactly, but our shoulders do let down a little. We breathe from a deeper place. We say to each other, well, it looks like the baton may be passing to these next runners, and they are fleet as thought and fiery as stars. And we take another breath and say to each other, the baton has been passed, and we set off then running hard behind them. And I love the last line because it's not that we're not with them, but you saw that beautiful young woman from Parkland stand up, and we want to follow them and support them too. And this is really the second part of mindfulness, that we quiet the mind and tend the heart, and then like Wangari Maathai, who won the Nobel Prize in Kenya for green forestry work, 51 million trees. She started one tree at a time. She was in prison. I think that's a prerequisite for the Nobel these days, we know. And then, as Henry David Thoreau said, though I do not believe a plant will spring where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me you have a seed there, and I'm prepared to expect wonders. And you have beautiful seeds to plant and water. Quiet the mind, tend the heart, and then in a spirit of joy and love for the world, that is the out-breath, the loving awareness of mindfulness. So, my dear.
That was beautiful, Jack.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a few questions related to it?
Related to that,
Draw
yes.
on your wisdom. We were together in England this summer, and we went to Parliament, where there's this whole Mindful Nation United UK that's bringing mindfulness, 185 members of Parliament, into the schools and into the healthcare and into the prison system. But one of the things in UK that happened is they appointed a minister of loneliness because people are so disconnected. And then you have a friend who's really involved with this. And somehow when we speak about mindfulness, it seems like it's a separate thing, navel-gazing, and it's not. It just prepares us. But what's the connection between mindfulness and loneliness, or connection itself?
I want to talk about Jeremy Nobel's work. He's a public health doc who's an old friend of mine from Boston, and he's actually coming to the conference, but his flight, anyway, he won't be here in time for this evening, but he'll be here the rest of the weekend, and I apologize that I won't be, because I'm teaching a retreat in Point Richmond that was scheduled before this with Anam Tupten and Norman Fisher. But Jeremy started something called the Unlonely Project. And as a public health doc, he's really pointed out how lethal loneliness is for us, and it's terrible for our health. And Jack was citing the statistic about teen suicide. You know, we have the statistics about addiction, and loneliness is as bad for us as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, physiologically. And that, when I heard that, and he was saying, you know, loneliness it's of all the diseases, it's the one that is the most preventable and the most easily preventable by finding connection. I mean, what's the opposite of loneliness, of being lonely? it's being connected. And I've thought a lot about this because when I first moved to Los Angeles from Boston, it was about 17 years ago, it was a very lonely move. I came for family reasons and didn't know anybody. And sure, we can meditate, and when we meditate and step back and receive life and relax into it, to just our being, there's not really any loneliness. But we then step up and get off our cushions and go about our lives, and we really need each other at that point. So yeah, Jeremy's work, the Unlonely Project, is really about helping people connect. They put out a film every week, but it's also about educating us. Everybody cares about health, but we're kind of ashamed to admit when we're lonely. I was talking to somebody after giving a talk, and she said she really wished she could meet somebody, and I said, "Oh, of course, you're lonely." She said, No, I'm not lonely. I'm not lonely. And I realized there's some shame or some kind of shame or embarrassment attached to admitting that we're lonely. But how is the motivation to get together? How could we ever bear actually to be in close relationships if we didn't have loneliness encouraging us?
Yes, dear. I know.
Excuse me.
Would you say something? Because you spend so much time also practicing Zen forms of mindfulness, that one of the great Zen masters spoke about intimacy as a connection to mindfulness. So what did he say, or how do you see mindfulness and connection, mindfulness and intimacy?
Well, you defined mindfulness. I mean, you gave the definition of loving awareness, and being intimate with things means coming very close to them. And one of my favorite teachings is from a 13th century Zen master named Dogen Zenji. And he teaches something called the backward step. And he's talking about really, as I said before, just stepping back into a posture of receptivity. I mean, you can do it right now if you even just move your body back a half an inch, and it's great to do when you're meditating and you find yourself lost in thought, to just shift that posture into where we're not tipping out toward the next moment, anticipating and approaching everything with our agenda of what we want to make happen, but really stepping back and just allowing life to appear and disappear and come to us and vanish. And he called this becoming intimate with all life, becoming intimate with all things. And I love this definition of meditation because it's relational. It's not that we're going into some inner world that's really separate from the outer world and shutting ourselves away. It's about opening our hearts, but opening with the intention to receive and to relax and to realize that we don't have to work so hard all the time. We can take a rest, and that this rest, it's not just like flopping kind of rest. It's a rest that nourishes our being because we're letting ourselves receive and appreciate what's here right now and be fully alive in the midst of it. Is that what you were curious about, Jeff?
Yes, it was, as a matter of fact. And then kind of tying it together, the last piece, that theme of stepping back, and then you said stepping up. So that once again, kind of like we talked about those two dimensions of mindfulness, once you step back and settle into a place of loving awareness that allows you to receive and be connected, then you step up, you respond in some way. And it seems to me that when you get quiet, you also feel that you have gifts, that you have something to offer the world. In fact, I think it's a very sad thing when we don't have the opportunity to give what's in our hearts or our minds. Everybody has gifts. And I was thinking about the stories you told when you came back from Africa, you know, and being in the Darfur refugee camps in Chad, and how these women were given even a tiny sliver of an opportunity, and what it made for them and for community. So would you say something about that?
Well, we think of it maybe as a tiny sliver of opportunity to what Jack is referring to as a program called Little Ripples that's part of an anti-genocide group that I work with called IACT. And inside LA, our group in LA partners with IACT. And we send teachers, and I went first to the refugee camps near South Sudan in Darfur, where there really is nothing. There's not enough food. There's not education, really. And what this program did is begin to train some of the young women to be preschool teachers, because the refugees, the radical piece was asking the refugees, what do you want? What do you need? It seems like a no-brainer, but that's not usually how aid works. And they asked for soccer and preschool. And so those were the soccer to connect them to the rest of the world when they felt so isolated and forgotten. They've been living in those camps now for some of them for 15 years and have been really forgotten by the international community. And preschool because the little kids were getting hurt because the older kids were taking care of them while their parents were out searching for whatever food they could find and so forth. And so we trained the young women in teaching preschool, and they wanted mindfulness as part of this program, which is how I got there. And to see the young women receive some education and how much they love it, and they love mindfulness too. You know, at first I thought on the hierarchy of needs, when you're starving, or not starving, but malnourished, is mindfulness most important? They love it. It helps them stay grounded in the present when they're having flashbacks to their trauma. They can come back and be present. They're teaching the children. And to watch them flower and have a chance to share their gifts, to step up and share their gifts with the world, has been so beautiful. And they've said things like, we had no idea that women had rights. We didn't know that women had rights like men. We didn't know that we could do some of the same things. But now we know, and we're so much happier.
So we need to wrap up. There's something in the gifts that you're talking about of, and I think about those women in Africa and the images that you brought back. For each of us somehow to recognize again that once we tend ourselves and quiet and cultivate that quality of loving awareness or the backward step, that then you have something beautiful to give to the world that is your gift, that will empower you in some way, and that you'll be able to do it in a very different way when you quiet and tend yourself. So this is the beginning of the conference and a place to begin to allow that to percolate in you. Thank you, dear.
I just want to say one thing, too. So many times we feel we don't have time to nourish ourselves and to take care of ourselves. And I just want to say we all have 24 hours. And just think, if you slept 8 hours, do you sleep 8 hours? I hope so. Probably not. If we sleep 8 hours, if we eat 3 hours, we probably don't eat for 3 hours, but if we did eat for 3 hours, if we spent 10 hours doing focused work, solid focused work each day, we would still have left over. What have I forgotten? Eating, sleeping, working. We would still have 18 10-minute sections left. And during those 18 10-minute sections, we can step back, care for ourselves, and you can reflect, and I hope you will, on what is your intention for this conference. May we create community and connection and really enjoy being together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack and Trudy. So our next speakers are going to be talking about celebrating political diversity. Joan Blades is co-founder of livingroomconversations.org, an open-source effort to build respectful civil discourse across ideological, cultural, and party lines while embracing our core shared values. A mediator by training and inclination, she is a nature lover, artist, and true believer in the power of citizens and our need to rebuild respectful civil discourse while embracing our core shared values. That sounds really good, doesn't it? John Gable co-founded All Sides with the mission. Co-founded All Sides with the mission. The mission is to free people from filter bubbles so they can better understand the world and each other. He also co-founded AllSidesForSchools.org. Both organizations strengthen our democracy and our social fabric. John has over 25 years of high technology entrepreneurship, management, and executive experience leading product, marketing, and consumer teams and division. Please welcome Joan and John to the stage.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, hello.
Oh, hello there. So,
we're not Buddhists. We'll be a little bit, we have to stand. We couldn't sit quietly.
So, a little over a year ago, John and I did a TED Talk in New Orleans about human connection. And you may not think that was a big deal, but it was kind of a big deal because I'm from Berkeley. I was born there. I'm the founder of Move On and Moms Rising. And I had to be very intentional about, thank you, about finding people that were conservative to talk to because I was curious and I had a lot of questions.
Well, I am not a progressive. It may be obvious. I'm actually from Kentucky originally, coal mining country of Kentucky. And in the 80s, I worked in Republican politics. I worked for the first President Bush, Republican National Committee, Senator Mitch McConnell. I'm sure he's very popular around here. And but that was a while ago. So for the last 25 years, I've been in technology. I moved out to Seattle to join the original Microsoft Office team, and then came down here to work for Netscape and became the team lead for, product manager lead for Netscape Navigator. Today, I live in San Francisco, and believe it or not, I am still a Republican. That's awesome. I love that. That's great.
And John's my very good friend. And we agree on some really critical things. That, in fact, we are living in increasingly toxic times politically. And that not only are we ceasing to share facts, we're living in separate narratives, and that's a huge problem. So a number of years ago, I co-founded with many partners from many backgrounds something called Living Room Conversations that allow people to have conversations across different, small conversations with just, and here we have the picture, me in my living room with a living room conversation with my Tea Party co-founder friend, Mark Meckler, and that was a great conversation, and also we're doing it by video. So Living Room Conversations is creating that capacity for us to have these conversations in a container that allows us to really listen. And that's something that I think will really resonate in this crowd.
So while Joan was starting Living Room Conversations, I was looking at the problem a little different way. She was basically dealing with relationship filter bubbles. And I was thinking about information filter bubbles and started something called All Sides. Now, the idea here is that I was very concerned that people didn't really see the whole picture. And the idea here is using a lot of technology and sentiment analysis in other ways, we automatically show different points of view of the same news story right next to each other. You can even do searches online with this. And actually, instead of seeing what you frequently get on Google or other search engines, kind of the same perspective, but from 12 different sources, we automatically provide different perspectives on the same issue, on the same news, so that we can actually be free to decide for ourselves, to think for ourselves. And then I met Joan. And the thing is that it's really interesting because we realized immediately. Joan asked me to go on a walk, and one of my moral of stories is if Joan Blades asks you to go on a walk, go on that walk. Because we just went on a walk, it was in Virginia, and we realized that what we were doing was completely complementary, that we completely were fighting the same fight, and then bringing together freedom from information filter bubbles and relationship filter bubbles, there was really some magic that could be had there.
So, what's happened since our TED Talk? Over 1 million people viewed it. Living room conversations are happening all over the country. All Sides is at about 2 million views per month. And so let's do a thought experiment. What if tomorrow morning when all the leaders in DC woke up, they all had climate change as their top concern? What would happen? Now, when I think about that, I go, okay, what are some of the things they agree on? Let's look at healthcare. Everybody would agree we want affordable, great healthcare. And our leaders have been working on that for decades. And they have achieved the most expensive healthcare in the world per capita. And we're not even in the top 10 when it comes to outcomes. So it's not just about convincing people. It's about having a relationship. It's about caring about each other. So that we have everybody's best ideas in the room. And when we care about each other, then everything changes.
So when you want to fix a problem, we got to start by looking at the cause of the problem. And this is kind of where we get to it. So 22 years ago at I guess it's actually up in Portland, Oregon. I gave a speech. And I had other people in Netscape back then. We were totally bought into the promise of the internet. So we'd be connected to all this great information online and all these great people. So we could actually make great decisions for ourselves with really good information, better decisions. And we appreciate people for who we individually are. Not just tolerate them, but really appreciate who they are. And in a lot of ways, the internet's done that. But I was concerned that we would actually also have this problem where we would actually, the internet would train us to discriminate against each other in new ways. And what they now call that is filter bubbles. So here's what's really happened. So we have this overwhelming noise of information. Too many people, too much information, so we actually go ahead and we filter it out. We use technology. And we use that technology to kind of just let in what we want to let in. And there are two very scary things that happen then. When we only are around people just like us, or we only see information that we already agree with, study after study shows this, a University of Colorado studied this recently, that we become much more extreme in our points of view. And we become much less tolerant of anybody with a different point of view or any idea that's different than ours. That's pretty much what we're seeing nationwide and worldwide, in modern worldwide today. But there is a solution to that, and that's getting out of these crazy filter bubbles.
Okay, so let's filter bubbles. How many of you in this group have friends that have really different political beliefs? Okay, good. Now, how many of you have political conversations about the things that are challenging with those friends? That's pretty good. It's not everybody for sure, but that's pretty darn good. The interesting thing well, interesting's kind of not the right word. The really disturbing thing that's going on is we're finding more and more people are not comfortable co-hosting a conversation, having a conversation across differences, because so many people have lost relationship in the last few years because political polarization has escalated. So we do have technology to help. We have the video conversation, so people can have video living room conversation with friends and old schoolmates in other parts of the country. And we have friends telling friends, but we also have
something we like to call a mismatch. So the idea, it's kind of like a dating site, but in a way, the worst dating site ever. So we're not matching you with your future, we're mismatching you across divides, socioeconomic, political, geographical divides, for a genuine, real conversation. And we don't really know necessarily how to do that as individuals anymore. So we actually include, and you see in the screen, how we actually guide you with a very carefully structured conversation guide, step by step, that Living Room Conversations has been using over 1,000 times. And what happens is, accidentally, we discover our common humanity and where we actually agree and how we can come together. It's not just a little app. This is actually for a much broader world. It's a platform for the Bridge Alliance. There are over 90 organizations part of this Bridge Alliance, which each organization is actually dedicated to bridging divides across differences. And they're not the only ones who are interested. Schools, nationwide, we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. News media, we've already worked with that have, surprisingly enough, that actually already given us like 1 million views in just a month with kinds of things we have. Libraries, 10,000 libraries in the nation, 100,000 school libraries. They want to be the center of a community for people to come together. We're talking to national restaurant chains. And we're also seeing a really remarkable thing happening in faith communities.
So last month, I got this wonderful video from Boise, Idaho. I visited there last year, and I stopped at the Vineyard Boise Christian Fellowship. And I started watching this sermon from their Campfire series, and I realized all of a sudden that they were actually talking about living room conversations, that they were planning to have monthly living room conversations for their community and asking their community, what are the questions you're afraid to talk about? And then they plan to take those people that in their community and reach out beyond their community. And this is our dream. Individuals and communities all around the country reaching out and connecting across differences. And I have to, the Reverend Pastor Trevor Estes did this sermon about, the work that Christ did, that Jesus connected. And I'm not good at memorizing things, so I had John put it on a slide for me. Big picture, God is love. You cannot make God visible to others without loving them right where they are. That means outsiders are welcomed. Outsiders find warmth. Outsiders are invited into deep conversation and they don't get burned. The sermon gave me chills. This is what we're dreaming of. And I got to hear things in a new way.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful thing to experience. We are seeing it in schools as well. And we just got together recently with the schools program, just started last year, really. And we're already being used by teachers in 47 different states, with 12,000 students and teachers using our tools every week. We just did just started a partnership with iCivics that's going to get us to 6 million more students in a year. There is a thirst out there for not being manipulated by outrage, but for understanding what's going on and having that personal connection.
And it's an amazing partnership for all sides of living room conversations, because when we have relationships with each other, then we can have everybody's best ideas in the room, and we have the agility to adapt and actually come up with solutions. That's what we've got to do. And I'm a grassroots person. I think it's got to start with us.
So the question is that enough? I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of things this whole weekend, and that's really remarkable. Is that going to change the course of our future history? Well, one thing that we've been talking is we've been talking to academics about movements, about social change. And we learned something quite interesting, that in general, that if you see a change at the national level, or in other cases, about 3.5% of the people have been engaged in that in some way. That once that happens, any group that hits that level, actually change happens. Legislation changes, the culture changes, society changes, the way we interact change. We have 330 million people in America. 3.5% of that, depending on whether you count just registered voters or everybody, that's anywhere between 5 million and 11 million people. That's a very doable number. And let's put on our hats of like innovators and technologists and think about product adoption. You're all probably familiar with an adoption curve like this. Well, 3.5% is only that small group of innovators and early adopters. Some people get discouraged that there are people on the extremes that will never listen to the other side. Well, to some extent, who cares? We have enough interest already nationwide to reach the innovators and early adopters. We just have to engage them and empower them, and with that, we can change the course of history.
So our message is, together we can do this.
We really can.
But we need you to lead.
Yeah, we are very pragmatists. I mean, from Move On to high-tech stuff, the reality is these things are not stuff you watch and see happen. It's stuff that we make happen. Every type of movement starts with groups like this and people in the room. It comes to us as individuals. So we invite you to do that. Invite them to join
Sunday
morning.
9:30.
Okay.
Questions and answers. Stage.
Maybe questions. I don't know about the answers.
Whatever it is. Anyway, I think it's over that way. Come join us. Have a living room conversation. It's not so much our answers as much as you guys getting a chance to try it out, because we want you to take it home with you. And we're around, so find us.
Thank you very much.
And thank you.
Thank you, Joan and John. So while they're moving the furniture, I would love for you guys to have some movement, but can you do it in silence so I can talk to you at the same time? So if everyone in silence could just kind of move, and then I'm gonna just share a few words. You just get up and stretch a little bit. So everybody's been here now for a little while, and we're landing. I'm hoping you're landing. We want to, one, apologize for the line at registration. Yeah, so I'm so sorry that happened. I won't go into why, but we do know why, and there were just some errors made from our different things that we did this year, so we're sorry. And we'd love for you to go after this. We're gonna get every volunteer we can waiting for you when you arrive. You can go at the end of the evening tonight, or you can go in the morning, and we're gonna make sure that doesn't happen again, so please forgive us. Okay. And I think they've almost got the chairs out, so just kind of wiggle around a little bit more. And we'll get started in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to introduce our next speakers. Come back, come back, come back to me, come back to me. So having a seat, bringing your presents back to the front of the room. So we are about to welcome 5 people from the Wisdom 2.0 community to guide us in practices and exercises that reflect our values. We called this session Wisdom 2.0 Values and Practices, and you are all in for a very big treat. Enjoy.
Hello, hello. You ready? Hello. Oh man, I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. Are you excited? So my name is Ashanti Branch, and I'm the founder and executive director of Ever Forward, Siempre Adelante. We're a youth development, all right, some people know Ever Forward, fantastic. We're a youth development mentoring program working with young men, middle school and high school. We have professional development for educators, parents, teachers, and we do these transformative experiences all over the world, giving people opportunities to get more real, people opportunities to take off their mask, opportunities to be more authentic. And so the first value that I'm going to talk about is authenticity. And so you're going to be meeting people all throughout these next few days. You're going to pass them in the hall, you see them at lunch, at the party. There'll be plenty of opportunities to decide whether you want to be more authentic or not. In the work that we do with young people, we tell them there's an opportunity to take off your mask. How much are you willing to let people know more of you? We believe that whatever you're showing of yourself is who you are. But there's probably more to you than we could ever see by just looking at you. And so hopefully over these days, you will give yourself a chance to get to know other people. You'll give them a chance to get to know you. And I think we'll start right now. Now, at our booth in that room over there, you're going to be able to, sometime throughout this experience, to go and participate in the 100,000 Mask Challenge. We ask people to take off the mask all over the world. We've collected over 30,000 masks from 12 countries where we've asked people to tell us, what is it you let people see about you? Gladly. And then also we ask you, what is it you really don't let people see? And anonymously, people will fill out these cards, and you'll be amazed at the amazing things that people are able to talk about. So here's how we're going to do this first. I only have a few minutes with you, so we're going to start here. So I'm going to need you to stand up. I need you to find, now you can't go too far because I only got a really short amount of time. I need you to find a partner. So ideally, if you're sitting next to somebody you know, go to somebody else now. So find somebody, but do it quickly, really quickly. You got about 12 seconds. 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. So hopefully you have your partner. Hopefully you have your partner. Wait. Oh, yeah, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello. So maybe you're already getting vulnerable. That's great. I haven't even told you the question. There's a question. So let me give you the question. So hold tight, hold tight, hold tight. Hold tight, hold tight. I should have done this first. See, I was a teacher, so I should know better. I should know that as soon as you tell people to go start talking and you don't tell them when you need them to stop, it's going to happen. And a bad teacher. I apologize about that. Okay, what I'm going to do is when I need your attention, I don't want to be like doing that hey, hey thing. I'm going to just do like this. If you see my hand go up, you put your hand up. People around you know that I'm raising my hand. You raise your hand. We all stop talking. Yeah? This is going to be quick. Here's the question you got. You got 1 minute each. So this is going to go really fast, right? 1 minute each. And respect the other person's 1 minute. Because if you take some of their 1 minute, they're not going to like you very much. All right? You get 1 minute each. Here's how it's going to work. The first question, actually maybe the only question. If you could give a message to your younger self, what message would you tell your younger self? 1 minute, starting now. First person.
Good one. It's a good one.
What would you tell your younger self? What would you say? What would you say?
Oh, what would you tell your younger self?
Honey, I would say.
Have the courage to
I would say, honey,
relax.
be yourself in the relationships that you're in, because that will help you find the people who love you for
What
who
would
you
you
are.
say? Aww, yeah, that's beautiful.
But you-
I'd say, kiddo.
I think this might be ours.
I don't think if it did not.
write it down.
Okay, I'll tell you.
Person number one, you have 15 seconds. Person number one,
I would
15
probably
seconds.
It's gonna be so much fun later. Write it down so I can see what you would say. I couldn't hear you.
15 seconds, 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now switch. You have 20 seconds. $15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now you can have a seat, have a seat. Thank your partner, thank your partner. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm hoping that you got to know that person a little bit better. My name is Ashanti Branch. That was 1 minute each. Please use these 2 days together to not stay with the people you came with and meet new people. Find a question that fits good and feels good for you. Learn about each other, get to know each other. Our world needs it. Thank you very much.
You could have gone on, Ashanti. That was wonderful. We could do more of that. So, from what I read in Scientific American, Albert Einstein, attributed to him anyway, said, if you can drive safely while kissing a girl, you're simply not giving the kiss the attention it deserves. What you were doing was actually letting us give each other a true attention, to see something that was both to reveal ourselves and also to see somehow the beauty that's behind the eyes of each of these other beings around, the kind of remarkable beings. Part of that requires that we also be in touch with ourselves. So let your eyes close for a little bit, and we'll do a few minutes of a kind of reflective meditation. First, just let yourself get quiet for a bit. Sense your own body seated here, halfway between heaven and earth, in this remarkable human incarnation. Feel how it breathes itself. And as you get quiet, let yourself tune in with loving awareness and listen, a kind of intuition or a sense of being present for yourself, this mystery of your life, kind of caring reflection. And I'll ask you a few questions and see what answers reveal themselves. What does your body want you to know at this point? What place in your body calls for healing? What happens when you bring kindness and compassion to that place in your body? What is the true state of your heart right now? What does your heart want you to remember? What is a simple intention that would serve you in these next 2 or 3 days? Serve you best. What is the next gift you most want to offer the world? And take a deep breath, and when you're ready, take these treasures. This is a visit to the inner treasury with your loving awareness. Take these understandings and treasures with you, remember them, write them down like a dream remembered, and stay in touch with them as we share these days together. Thank you. No, you're Trudy, you're next.
Okay. So our bodies, I want to share with you a practice that I really love that is about bringing loving awareness to our bodies. Conferences are hard on the body. You know, this is just the first night, but you know, days of sitting in the chair, and it's really good to have a way to nourish and give loving attention to our bodies. So, and the body is the first foundation of mindfulness, the place where we really establish our loving awareness with the understanding that it's through this body, just this body, that we can understand all the deepest truths of life. So I want to lead you, I want to lead a meditation that I learned years ago in a retreat from a Sri Lankan monk, and when he started teaching it, I thought, you've got to be kidding. It really felt like we were in preschool or something. So as we did it, though, and at the end, I realized I felt so good. It worked. So you may have those thoughts and judgments at the beginning. You'll be aware of them, and but just try it, because this is really love, body love. So closing your eyes, or just leaving them partway open, but tuning in to the body, sitting on the chair, on the floor, wherever you're sitting, standing, just taking a deep breath, tuning in as you did with Jack. And now we're going to really offer love to our bodies in the simplest way through these phrases of loving kindness. And all you have to do is repeat the phrase to yourself listen to what you're saying as you say it. See if you can mean it. And that's it. So to begin with, we offer loving kindness to our heads. And we do it by wishing, may my head be happy. I know, it's very simple, but just bear with me. May my head be happy. May my whole face, my scalp, my ears, my jaw, my brow be at ease. And may my neck be happy. And if you feel that region of your neck, you can just feel maybe relaxing a little bit. My shoulders. May my shoulders relax and be happy. And my arms. My whole arms, upper, elbow, lower, wrist. May my arms be at ease and be happy. And my hands, the thumbs and fingers, palms and back of the hands. May my hands be at ease and happy. And now the whole front of my body, my chest, my breasts if I have them, my belly, the whole front of my body. May my body in front be at ease and be happy. And the back of my body, bringing attention to the upper back and wishing happiness. May my shoulder blades be happy and relax. And the mid-back, the thoracic spine, the ribs, my lower back, which often carries so much tension. May my whole back be happy and strong. May my spine be happy. And my hips, my bottom, buttocks, genitals, this whole region of my body be at ease, at peace, relaxed, and happy. May my thighs be free from judgment and completely happy. My knees, the front and back, this whole complex joint, may my knees be happy. And my lower legs, my calves and shins, may my lower legs too relax and be happy. And now my feet, my feet that carry me everywhere. May my feet be free from tension, be relaxed and happy. And now feeling the whole body, head to toe, and just wishing for health and safety, for strength and ease. May my whole body be filled with loving awareness, feeling the whole body from within the experience of being this body. And when you're ready, opening your eyes and thanking this body that carries our life. Thank you.
So, good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. And I want to talk a little bit about gratitude. And it's really great to hear all these practices. These are practices that you can use throughout the whole workshop, not so of your life, but particularly while you're here. And I want to talk about gratitude because there's something that I notice that happens to me, and you might notice that it might happen to you in your life or during this workshop, is that you might start comparing yourself to somebody here. You know that feeling like, wow, they have this, they're an entrepreneur, they're on the cover of Yoga Journal, wow, they're rich, right? What am I doing with my life? And we start to feel a deficit, okay? And we start to feel I'm not enough. And that can bring about a lot of feelings of disconnection and suffering. And so gratitude, I love this practice. When I start to get in that mindset of beating myself up or comparing, I should be more this way or more perfect or that or this. When I come back into doing gratitude, it's like I just fill my cup up, right? I take it and I say, this is what is great about my life. This is what works. This is where I'm creative. So I think one of the things that's beautiful about this time is to use it to fill up your cup. Don't sit around emptying up, I'm not this, I'm not enough, I'm not, I should, I wish, I need to. Let's let all that go. So what we're going to do is just have a few moments of practicing gratitude with each other. I think that's a big theme is connection. You know, according to all the research, that's what we really only want, right, is to be connected in a community. So let's practice a little bit of gratitude. What we're going to do is we're going to get into groups of 4, because each of you is going to get into a group and you're going to each share 3 things. Okay, so it's quick. We don't have too much time. But 3 things in your life that you feel grateful for. Okay, so you can just kind of turn to the little group around you. You don't have to kind of look super far. You know, you're not marrying this group. You're just, you know, you're hanging out for a couple moments. What you feel grateful for. 3 things. Just a couple more seconds here. What do you feel grateful for? Okay, we're going to wrap up in just a short few seconds here. Make sure everyone gets a chance. Okay, and when you're done, you can bring your hand up, kind of raising your hand. We'll come back into... Okay, everybody, we're going to wrap up. But I want to have a few people share. So coming back into silence. Thank your group. A little bow. Yeah. Okay, so raising your hand. So we're going to end this part. And I want to hear from just a couple of people. What do you feel grateful for? Just a couple of people, just shout it out. What came to mind? Grateful for, I am. Family, yes. Community. Health, oh my gosh, health, right? Home, yes, to have a home. What else do you feel grateful for? A voice, yes. Your mind, science. Good hair, wow, yeah. I'll take it, all of us. So I wanted you to really encourage you. I want you to think about gratitude while you're here. If you feel that feeling walking in contracted, I'm not good enough, everyone's so much more excited. What are you? I got nice hair, I got good health, I got kids. I got, to remind yourself, right? This is the abundance. This is the mind state that is the lacking poverty. It's the, yeah, we can be filled up from the inside. So, thank you.
Oh, it's a lot of people. Hello, my name is Arturo, and for those of you who have not heard me here, I began 9 years ago in the very last row, sort of curled up like that, going, who are all these people? This is wrong. But Jack and John were on stage, and they gave me what has been one of the great gifts of my life, which is the idea that if we all kind of saw each other for who we are as people, as human beings, parents, kids, somebody who just had a fight, somebody who had a wonderful day or a difficult day, that if we just knew that about each other, that the world would be a better place and we would get along. And so that's going to be my invitation for the community exercise. And I'm going to describe it fully, and then we're going to let you all loose with it. So the exercise is going to be around really listening. Any meaningful growth or change in a relationship, I believe, really starts with an act of listening. So I'm going to ask each of you to find somebody, if you can, that you haven't talked to before. So stand up and find somebody you haven't talked to before. And then say, my name is, and I'll model in a moment, my name is Arturo. And just say two things about yourself that are very quick. The first one is something that sort of makes you really human, and it's something might be a little bit uncomfortable to share, but vulnerability is so important. And then the second one is something that makes you smile. And then the person who receives that needs to say, my name is so-and-so, and mirror back to you what you said in a way that feels like if it were you saying it. Like really, it's an act of listening and then mirroring back, and then you change places. So I'm going to do it with everybody in the room. My name is Arturo, and when I came out of the shower this morning to get ready for the big talk today, I realized I had a pimple on the tip of my nose. And I love trees. Trees make me smile. Okay, so with that, stand up, find one person that you ideally haven't spoken to, and do the exercise. around 15 seconds or so. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Come back. Don't need to sit down, just come back. Hello, hello. Probando, probando. Solamente una vez amé la vida. Solamente una vez. Okay, welcome back. So, and we're going to go into break, so there's no need to sit down if you don't want to. But the invitation is for the entirety of the time that you're here to listen like that, to listen as if whatever was given to you, you were going to offer it back to the person in a way that they truly felt heard. And I really hope that many seeds are planted this weekend that open up all sorts of paths and possibilities for everybody with us tonight. Thank you.
So here's how we're going to roll this. We're running a little bit late. So if you need to take a break and go to the bathroom, please feel free now. But we just have a couple more sessions. So I think we're just going to roll. So again, if you need to take a break, stand up. You can head to the bathroom. And if you don't need to take a break, stay here, and we'll just continue on. That way we can try to get out of here on time and get to sleep on time. So, so again, my name is Soren. And I often don't give talks at Wisdom 2.0 because I'm hosting, and I feel like it's really my job to introduce other people. But many people then don't actually ever hear the story of how Wisdom 2.0 started, and they have all kinds of ideas that aren't true in their mind. So I thought I would tell a little bit about the story about Wisdom 2.0. And sometimes people look at me and they think, one, I was born in Silicon Valley. And two, I started some successful tech company, and then I just decided to go into this. And the truth is much more interesting and complicated than that. So I was going through a really difficult time in my life where I had a job that just ended. I had a marriage that just ended. And everything that I kind of knew to be me and real and what I identified as was kind of being taken away. Put this down. And so I had a year where I was unemployed, and I was living in a little trailer in New Mexico. And I remember I was paying $500 a month for the trailer in New Mexico, and I was trying to kind of grow my own food and live as long as I could off what little money I had, and see if I could call Chase every month and extend my credit card limit, which they were generally happy to do at a high interest. And I listened to a lot of Eckhart Tolle, who I really appreciated. One of the things that Eckhart used to say, don't ask what you want to do, ask what the world wants to do through you. So don't ask what you want to do, ask what the world wants to do through you. And so I sat with that for probably about a year. Like, what is it that the world wants to do through me? And I went through this period where I was really, really, really frustrated and pissed off. Like, I created this space, like, come on, world, fucking tell me what it is that you need me to do. Who's been in that space? Yes, like, come on. I've done all this. I'm, like, visualizing, like, meditating. I'm doing the things. And one of the beautiful things that I got from him was, like, actually being present is the greatest way to tune into your purpose. It's not about actually dreaming up something in the future, but it's actually being present right now. And so I remember practicing just being present, and I was going for a walk one day, and it's like a breeze just kind of came across me. And it's like I was hit by something. It's the best way I can describe it. And I got this idea, and it was like wisdom and technology. Yes, it's like chocolate and peanut butter, right? Like the two go together, like yes. And so I was like, okay, I got it now. And so I wrote a book called Wisdom 2.0. And as most authors do, they think Oprah's going to call the next day once the book is published. She didn't. And it didn't really make the dent in the universe that I wanted it to. And I was, again, in those moments where like, come on, universe. I thought we had a plan here. I'm doing what I'm doing. And then the universe said, or something happened. I was like, well, what if this isn't a book? This is actually a community conversation. And what if there's a conference to emerge out of this? And as any kind of entrepreneur knows or person knows, like once you start something and you get hit and you fail and you kind of come up against a wall, it doesn't mean it's time to quit. It just means it's time to innovate and think kind of differently. And so I was sitting in New Mexico in my trailer, and I knew nobody in tech. Nobody in tech. And I had a friend of a friend who knew somebody who worked at Google or something like that. So I was like, cool, I'll work on that thread because I knew I wanted to involve the technology leaders. And I knew that there was something that was trying to emerge in me, and I guessed that it was trying to emerge in other people too, that we love technology, but in and of itself, it's somewhat like crazy making. Has anybody noticed crazy making technology? I was like, wow, look, I've got 5,000 friends. And it's like, oh shit, I've got 5,000 friends, and I need to like their posts, and I need to get back to them, and they just said this nice thing about me, I have to say this nice thing about them, and there's the news cycles, just kind of constant. And so I felt like there was this community that wanted to arise that wanted to be conscious and wanted to grow and wanted to be thoughtful and mindful. And I thought of the world that my kid was going to grow up in, and I got really scared and nervous. Like, what is this world that we're bringing our kids into, where they know how to, develop they know how to code and they know how to build a website and build an app, but they don't know how to look across the table to somebody and actually see them and hear them. And I began to get very concerned about what is this world that we're creating. And so I learned a couple different interesting things. One is that if you tap into a vision that's bigger than you, it's like supercharged. If it's a vision that's like the world actually needs in that moment, and you're not trying to make it about yourself, there's a power to that. And that people come together and support you that you never would have thought of. So Joseph Campbell has a quote. He says, when you follow your bliss, and by bliss I mean that inner tug of your heart, when you follow that, doors will open where you never thought there to be doors, and where there wouldn't be doors for anyone else. And something about the integrity of a life and the universe moves in to help. And I didn't know what the hell that meant completely at that time, but I knew I wanted to be in that space. I wanted to live such a life of integrity that the universe would be like, let's help this guy out, like let's give him some support. So that's really how Wisdom 2.0 started. And I remember in the early days, I wanted to get one speaker, and I wasn't quite sure how I could get that first speaker because I had no experience. And so I remember somebody had said yes. Well, actually, Roshi Joan Holofox said yes, and this other guy named Chris Sacca had said yes. And fortunately, neither of them asked who else was speaking. Which was like such a relief to me because they were the only one speaking. And I remember if I have one speaker and I have one audience member, we're good. Like that was my goal, like one speaker and one audience member. And with the help of Jillian, and who's here, and the Fetzer Foundation, we actually were able to rent a place for a couple hundred people. And we had several hundred people show up. But the biggest lesson for me was that when we tap into a kind of a vision where the universe is working through us, it's not about the ego and about me and I'm so great and let me come and give my 5 lessons for success or let me come and tell the world how wonderful I am, which has some value, but it's really about community and it's about a vision for the world that's bigger than us. And like any vision, we need others to join it. Otherwise, it's very lonely. And so for me, one of the biggest inspirations has been how many people from so many, I think there's about 30 different countries here, felt that same pull, right? Like they felt something that they wanted to say yes to. And to me, that's the greatest gift that I've ever received, I think, is the gift of a shared purpose. And you can have all the money in the world and all the fame, and I've met people who have a lot of both of those, and they're not necessarily happier. But when you have real friends, you have real community, you have a real vision, you're working to create a better world, and you're living from your heart, Like, that's something that nothing can buy, and to create a community that's based on that is such a unique gift. And so, for me, you make my dreams come true. Because otherwise, it'd just be me on stage, and it's just not nearly as fun. But I really want to inspire all of us, too, that we all have something that we want to bring forth in the world. And I think Jack spoke to this. Each one of us has a gift. So this conference isn't just about hearing about well-known tech leaders like Ev, who we really appreciate, or teachers like Jack and Trudy, who we also really love. But it's also really about you and what is that you want to bring into the world. What is your gift? What is your contribution to this world? What is it that on your deathbed, whether that's one day from now or 50 years from now, will make you kind of think, wow, I did it. I might have messed up 10,000 times, but I actually followed that impulse of my heart towards something that made sense inwardly, even if it didn't make sense externally. It made no sense externally for me to start a conference. Like, we were in a recession at the time. I had no experience. I didn't know anybody. And externally, any financial planner would have been like, this is the worst decision you can make here. But internally, it made sense. Internally, it just felt like, this is my contribution. And so my hope is that this conference, while you're learning a lot and taking part in dance classes and breakouts and yoga and meditations, that it's also time for you to tap into that inner voice inside yourself and really reflect on, is the contribution you're making now one that feels genuine? And is there something that also wants to be spoken through you? And can you find the right people and the right support to nurture that, to water that, to tend to that? Like any seedling, it needs sun, it needs water, it needs love. And so my hope with this community is that we can be that for each other. And you might be a weirdo in your own community in Spokane, Washington, but here you fit in, or wherever you come from. So I feel like we're a bit of that kind of different kind of world. And so my hope would be that for these next couple of days, you can actually use it as a kind of a meditation and a reflection about what matters to me, and am I living that, and am I bringing that forth? And how do I find the right support and the right people who would do that? I remember early on in Wisdom 2.0 when I was trying to reach out to people. So for example, Ev, who was here earlier, I emailed him 5 years in a row and he said no to speak, because it was still, or no, 5 years, 3 years. It was a number of years I had emailed him, and he said no. And I just kept coming back. I'm like, hey, Ev, me again. Yeah, year 3, will you come? And eventually he said yes, and he's become a friend and like a part of the community. And so there needs to be a certain determination, I think, that we have, and a certain vision that we're compelled by something that's bigger than us. And to me, the world doesn't need more, what's the word? The world doesn't need more, and the world doesn't need like more kind of leaders in the sense. What they need is more people following and living that core value, and following and living that contribution that makes sense. And I feel like if we can create a world where all of us are living in our bliss, and all of us are living in our purpose, and all of us are living in our full potential, then the world that our kids are going to grow up in is very different than the world now. And I think one of the beautiful things about our current political system is you can look at our leadership without naming names, and you can see how much suffering goes in to thinking you always have to be right, to thinking that everybody else is the enemy, to always having to say something negative about another person in order to feel better about yourself. Like, it's such an example of somebody with so much wealth and so much power, and who suffers so much and creates suffering. So there needs to be a different model, and there needs to be a different way. And my hope is that this community can help to showcase and move forward that way. And I wish we could rely on the Democratic Party and the Republican Party and the Green Party to do it, but I don't think they can, actually. I think they're very beautiful and wonderful and have a contribution, but it also feels like there's a contribution for us to make. And that contribution is about listening deeply. That contribution is about being present. That contribution is about trying to be compassionate, even so freaking hard sometimes, and trying to be empathetic, even though that's super hard sometimes. So I feel like there's a movement that's needed in our culture, and I'm honored and joyful and proud to be a part of that movement and part of that community with you. And I feel like the world needs that. They need people who You know, if you look at what my children, I've got a few children now, and if you look at like what it makes to raise a child, like, yeah, they need love and they need support and they really need encouragement and they need to be seen. And no amount of money and no amount of fame can provide that for them. So I guess I just want to say you're welcome as a part of this community, and I honor you and I thank you for coming, and that I really want you to use this time as a reflection for your own gift and what that gift might be. And I feel like Wisdom 2.0 is set up to try to support you in living that gift. So while there's many wonderful, famous speakers that we might have, if that's all that it's about, I think we're missing an opportunity. And I think hopefully what you get from this stage inspires you to then take action and to bring out your own voice into the world. And so as an organization, you know, we want to support that. So that's a little bit about the actual story of Wisdom 2.0. And again, I really want to thank you, and we have a few more sessions to do tonight before we're done. And thank you. So as part of that, I want to introduce Michelle Rugebrink, who has been coming here for 7 years, and she's been sitting in the back, she says, kind of watching very nonchalantly. And Michelle works for the Forest Service Environment and Performance Office as the Office of the Chief of Mindfulness and Resiliency Program Manager and Professional Coach. Michelle's worked for 16 years on wildland fire engines, hand crews, and hotshot crews. Michelle was featured in Time Magazine's anniversary edition, September 18, for her work in teaching mindfulness. So we have Michelle coming out, who is, she can talk more about this, but who is one of our community members who found a way to become a head mindfulness teacher, if you will, for the U.S. Forest Department, and is doing amazing things in the government. So please welcome Michelle to the stage. So welcome.
Thank you.
So I was just talking about the power of this community and how many people are here and how many people are also exploring what is their particular gift and what their particular contribution is. And you're a firefighter, and you were also interested in mindfulness.
Yes.
How do you balance those two worlds, and how do you actually have a job teaching mindfulness as a firefighter? So,
yeah. So it's been a journey. Yeah. I had to really do the work on myself. And you also helped support that platform, by the way, for 7 years sitting out in the crowd, and then meeting John Kabat-Zinn along the way. And it was transformational in my life. But I had to turn to my suffering to then turn to hold others. And so in the government, I've been called Red Bull in DC. Yeah. But I'm actually, I say I'm chamomile tea rooted in wisdom, when to know to use both.
Okay.
Okay. And so I start a lot of initiatives and a lot of different things. And people started seeing the change in me, and then I had a conversation with leadership, and I said, you know, what would it look like if we got out of our own way? What do you mean? And I said, well, what if we, you know, we teach mindful-based stress reduction?
In the government?
In the government. And see what happens. And I can tell you I have 2,000 people in my class right now for the winter MBSR class. It's from Maine to Hawaii, California, everywhere.
Government employees.
And it's all, so I opened it up, because why not share with everyone, right? It's not just about us, it's get out of your own way and share. And so, and it's free. And so I have FEMA, I have OPM, Office of Personal Management. We had a bunch of 36 FEMA employees called from Puerto Rico with surviving members from Hurricane Maria that were also taking the class right now. Wow. Borderland Security, I mean, just tons of other federal agencies. Wow. EPA, IRS. And so it
They're
is
all taking your mindfulness-based stress reduction
yes.
program through the government. Okay.
Yes, yes. And it's just gone viral. And so just like,
And who okayed this, by the way?
So, okay, so I kind of start, I started one class on a local forest, and then I got working into civil rights. So what a journey. Went from fire, occupational health and safety, into research, and then went into civil rights. That's where the most movement happened. And so I encourage everyone, get out of your own way with where you think the program needs to start. Maybe it doesn't need to start wherever you think it needs to be. Maybe it's the opposite. And it just flourished and really was supported by the civil rights director and deputy, and then the chief of the Forest Service. And I went and talked with Congressman Tim Ryan, huge supporter, and have had many supporters, lots of profound teachers that are probably out in the audience somewhere in there or streaming. And so that's kind of how it started, and it's just gone. So we have a spring class starting March 27th, and there's a waiting list right now, and it hasn't even really been officially announced, with 1,000 on it.
So what's the interest? Why are thousands of people in the government wanting to take a mindfulness-based stress reduction class? I have my reasons.
You think? So a lot of people are obviously, there's a lot of suffering in the world. And one of the things too, we see a lot of people will say, well, why is there a high risk of depression or suicide in the fire agency? We've had catastrophic, horrific events. Think about the Paradise Fire. Think about all of the Carr Fire. Think about the hurricanes in Florida and everywhere. We do all risk. And then there's a lot of other, with relationships. And it's been transformational. And what people are seeing in everyone else, they're seeing the change in everyone. So they're getting curious. They're like, so-and-so said that's pretty cool. I'm going to try that out. And we're really taking the deeper dive, and I'm not changing it something else or renaming it. We're meditating. And we're doing the body scan. And we're doing walking meditation. And I'm not calling it emotional intelligence or anything else. It's okay. So it's been beautiful.
Nothing against emotional intelligence.
No,
but
you can call it whatever you want. You want to call it emotional intelligence? Beautiful. But I just ask everyone, and I don't change the tone of my voice or anything. We just guide. If you would like to close your eyes, I get a lot of people saying they fall asleep to my voice with a body scan. I try to let them know, want to be awake. But it's been transformational.
Wow.
And it's just flourishing, and it really is about all of us.
And so what is that to work with people who, like firefighters, who have to go into some of the most dangerous situations and risk their lives? How do you teach, what's the role of mindfulness at that? How do you relate to that, both in your own firefighting and also working with people who are going into extremely dangerous situations?
So to be present in the present moment, to actually feel it. We're making decisions. We're running into places where everyone's running out. And I said this when I talked to the Time magazine in the fall. It's being able to be present in the middle of chaos, right? To be able to change your moment in the middle of chaos. So you may have the fires ripping up the ridge, you got an air tanker coming, you're yelling and screaming, and you're making command decisions right here, right now. How beautiful is it to actually stop and just take a breath? And I know it sounds, because it's like snot's running, smoke, you can hardly breathe. You want me to take a breath, Michelle? Yeah, I want you to take a breath. And even inviting, like when you're filling up your chainsaw with gas, that you can lift up your head for a moment, that you can actually feel the body by just disrupting that sympathetic nervous system. And it's been extremely powerful in allowing people with their relationships coming home, because we'd come home from a fire. A lot of times you don't want to talk about what you saw. You see a lot of things, and it's hard, and sometimes we would, you find other ways to mask that. And so it lets you meet your own suffering.
And people are willing to do that more and more.
Yes, and the 8-week, I started taking the deeper dive, not going like a super fast little, let's do this in whatever amount of time. It's actually doing the work on yourself.
And you said you had to do the work on yourself to then do this work. Could you say that? Because I think a lot of people are also feeling like they have something they want to bring into the world, and yet they also have their own suffering. And are they ready to do that? And how do they address their own suffering, but also do this work? And how have you balanced that in your life?
Yeah. So for me to meet it, when I had to go through that period of time, because in 1994 was when I was involved in a horrific, catastrophic fire where we lost 14 firefighters. And John Kelso, my real good friend, he was like 5 seconds from the top. And we just went on with working. We never talked about it. My husband was called saying, your wife's missing. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I got to a phone, and he's like, I'm going to come pick you up. And I was running on adrenaline. I'm fine. I'm going to keep going. I'm fine. I'm a firefighter. And I had become a workaholic in a way of wanting to be a nurturer. On my crew, I was always the mother hen. I'm the last one out. I want to make sure you guys eat first. I'm the last one to eat. And there was always this need to take care of everyone. And then I had realized at one point, it was like, wait a minute. You're sacrificing your own self, your presence, your full being, Michelle. And
so what did you do?
So I was introduced to meditation, and actually John Kabat-Zinn and Saki, and I was at Mount Madonna, and I was doing 7-day mindful tools. Rhonda McGee was there, and it was a transformational period in my life.
And did you actually feel that trauma again in a different setting?
Oh yeah, I had to meet it over and over again. And then once you do, then you can help hold others, and you can meet them where they're at. And you'll know, but you have to do the work on yourself. You can't just like, oh yeah, I took a whatever.
Course or training or whatever.
Like, no, it'll be the rest of my life, I'll be working on it. But
But you knew that you had your own inner work to do, and that would then allow you the ability to work with others from that
and
place.
It took years, not a couple years, years.
Yeah. And so how do you see that process? Because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of people I think who want to bring mindfulness into some organization. And the government, I would think, would probably have to be one of the most challenging organizations. So what are some of the things you learned that has helped you? One is work on your own suffering as primary. Are there other things that you feel like you've learned in your skills that might help somebody who might be trying to bring that into a school or into a business or into a nonprofit organization? Have you learned things that you feel like would be applicable for other people?
Well, yeah. I mean, first of all, the embodiment, that it's embodied, so you authentically come from that place. So when you talk about it, people feel that and know it. Okay? That was the number 1. And then get out of your own way with being worried about it's not going to work, or what if I do this or that. Just go for it, right? And allow it and see what happens, right? And that it can be anywhere. Mindfulness is from the time we wake up till the time we go to bed. Just like Sharon Salzberg always says, we don't meditate to get better at meditating. We meditate to get better at life. And so just that can go into all points of life. And from this, I started the Mindfulness, Compassion, Inclusivity Summit. And thank you, 1440 Multiversity. They helped host us. And it was beautiful. And John Kabat-Zinn and Dan Siegel and Rhonda McGee and Ashanti Branch and Byron Katie. And we held it in January. And of course, it was a big plan for the whole government to come. And then we got furloughed.
Oh, right.
So I did it on my own.
Oh, yeah.
And everyone was so generous, and so did it on my own. But the beautiful thing with that was we could share it with the world. And just offering monthly guided meditation. I do a monthly mindful webinar on a different theme. Next week is Trust for Happiness. Last month was Self-Compassion, Heart Month.
This is to government employees, because I have this notion that government employees, all government employees.
And I opened it up because I reached out to every federal agency. Because I'm a federal integrative health coach, so I have contact with all federal agencies.
Okay.
So I sent out a little message. Here's a flyer, and it's free.
Yeah.
And they love it. So free,
Right.
And
free self-compassion.
Yes. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah. Yeah. And what have been, we just have a little short time, what have been some of the surprises you found? Were there anything that has been unexpected that either people have wanted or people have asked for or people have given you feedback about? Is there anything that you feel like you've been like, wow, I didn't expect that to happen?
I had no idea the impact that it would have.
Yeah.
Everywhere I go with different places, there's these testimonials that just give you buffalo bumps, not goosebumps, buffalo bumps. And it's just profound gratitude. And when we think about, like with the Forest Service, we're responsible for 193 million acres, and all our headwaters that we drink when we go to the tap today, okay, we're protecting like the environment. That it's all of us, that we're all interconnected. And like Dan Siegel says, it's not just the me or the we, it's the we.
Yeah.
I love that. And so that's one of the profound things, though, is I just hold so much gratitude every day for being we're all a little spark. And we all are interconnected, and when we put it all together, it's like, like we said, compassion spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
And it does. It does. And it touches my heart, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So when I was talking to Michelle before this, she's like, well, I'm just an ordinary person. And she's, I'm just a member of Wisdom 2.0. I've come, I usually sit in the back. I'm just an ordinary person. And I was like, we need ordinary, extraordinary people is exactly what we need. And I think we all appreciate all the work that you do and that the firefighters do and that the people who put their life on the line so that we can live more comfortable lives and safe lives. And I really appreciate you both for that role of the journey of kind of keeping our wildernesses safe and our homes safe, and also for your work in spearheading something that I can't imagine anybody else being able to do that but you. I think you've got just the right amount of spunk and passion, and you're an inspiration to all of us. You really are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So as we're setting up just in the next minute for our next panel, I would love for everyone to pause, who's here, close your eyes if you like, and just reflect for a moment. It's already been a full evening. We just started. What do you imagine now that you're here and you've heard what you've heard and experienced what you've experienced? What feels like it was meant just for you? So just reflecting to yourself. What words that were shared? What insights have come that feels like, oh, this is why I'm here? And opening your eyes. Thank you. Thank you for your presence. This feels so good in here. So I'm excited to introduce the next panel. They're all going to introduce themselves, but it's going to be 5 of our really close friends of the conference who've been here since almost the very beginning. And we named the panel 10 Years of Wisdom 2.0 Reflections and Thoughts. And so I'm going to introduce Arturo, Irene, Bradley, Karen, and Gopi on stage. Here they come. Give them a welcoming.
Still a lot of people. We wanted to have a conversation because I think for all of us, wisdom has touched our lives in a pretty profound way. And at the same time, we've kind of lived what it means to navigate our practices and our beliefs in the context of our work and our life. And this has been a journey that has been, for many of us, as long as wisdom has been around. And so I wanted to start off by asking everybody if you could say a little bit about yourself, and then talk about sort of what you found as a challenge in bringing sort of your practice or your full self into your work life. And then actually, I've asked everybody to ask a question of the group, and so this is my question, and then we'll, I think Bradley or whoever will go next. So.
Who would you like to go first, Joe?
I think Bradley will go first.
I'll go first. I'm Bradley, and I'm a longtime meditator for about 30 years, and I'm a tech executive. I've worked at Google for about the last decade. The way that I came into wisdom was Soren did a cold outreach to me and asked me if I would like to support this thing he was doing. And not much more detail was available than that. But it was enough that I felt intrigued and really felt the purity of his intent. And as a curator and shepherd, he was able to sort of hold this space of opportunity without sort of imposing any agenda on it, which I thought was amazing. I just love that kind of leadership, and it's a delicate art to sort of be open and not completely passive, but sort of to just hold that space. And I thought he was just masterful at how he did that. And so I agreed to help support, I think it was the unconference portion of the very first Wisdom conference, which is 10 years ago. And I very generously volunteered Google's resources. I'm always available to give away somebody else's stuff. But I should mention that I don't say yes to every inbound request. I want to make that very clear at this moment. But got very much bitten by the bug that has bitten us all and has brought all of you here, which is really the safe and loving and curious space that Soren has created here, and it's just been a joy to watch that evolve over the years. In terms of a challenge I have about bringing my full self to work, I do see so much opportunity in work to work on myself and to bring the practices. I mean, there's never a moment or interaction or day that goes by without many, many opportunities to bring that fullness of myself in there. And so I felt like very, very blessed to have an opportunity to do that in very, very subtle ways. So I remember recently we were talking about bringing meditation into the workplace, and the sharing that came up for me in that session was that it was less about bringing candles and gongs and incense and moments of silence, and much more about listening and creating safe space for people to share, non-judgmental. Just as we observe our own thoughts flying by, you could listen to other people's opinions and not necessarily react or get attached and things like that. So that the opportunity was really to practice in a way that no one would notice. At least overtly. I caught a little bit of the previous speaker sharing so much about embodying as opposed to teaching or in addition to teaching. And so for me, that's a lot of what it's been, is sort of just the opportunity to do the inner work in that great part of our day that is our work life.
Thank you.
Hi.
Oh, I left out the most important part. I'm Irene's husband.
I'm his wife. Hi, I'm Irene. And we're to introduce ourselves and then talk about our relationship to wisdom.
A little bit, just to see how you got connected with wisdom.
I am a yoga teacher. I'm a designer. I work at a venture capital firm. I'm a former Googler, so I used to work with all these guys. A former Yahoo, where I used to work with both of these guys. I think that where you have common interests and common friends, the paths kind of lead to the same road, and so that's kind of how I got connected to the Wisdom 2.0 community, and have spoken here throughout the years about the relationship between design and the self and our inner spirit, and maybe even led a few yoga practices here as well. In terms of challenges around bringing the full self into the workplace, this was definitely a big struggle for me when I worked at Google during a time where my kids were very young. I think they were 3 and 6, and my entire team, I don't think anybody else really had that many children, and so I was like this old person who had kids. It was it was almost embarrassing to be a working mom, because I could feel like a skepticism that people had around me and whether I could be effective, because I wasn't fully there, because I also had these kids and I had to make their lunches and drive them to school and things like that. This is also during a period of time when it was very difficult for me personally and professionally. Just advancing design at Google was not an easy task. All of that really led me to deepen my practice. That was the way that I could cope with the physical pain that I was experiencing, as well as the emotional suffering, going through divorce at the same time and things like that. I feel like now that I'm older and kind of on the other side of it, I really don't see any separation between myself and the completeness of who I am and coming to work. I felt some insecurity around it at first when I entered the world of venture capital 5 years ago. Like, would people take me seriously? In fact, one of the headhunters that I spoke with was like, so what's the deal with you being a yoga teacher? Like, can you really join a venture capital firm and be taken seriously? It's like, I actually think that that's what makes me more effective. And that's why some of the entrepreneurs are drawn to working towards me. And I can see more clearly what's getting in the way of what they need to do, and I can coach them more effectively through those issues. So I really don't see this separation between who I am and bringing that to work. I embrace it, and I think that's actually led to me being more effective and just enjoying work more wholly as a result.
That's great.
I'm Karen May, and happy to be here this evening with my friends, who I would not necessarily have if it were not for Wisdom 2.0. So that would be one form of connection, is just the relationships that formed out of doing this together for so many years. My connection here started at the second conference, and basically Soren says, Karen, would you interview someone at the conference? And I say, sure, who? And he says, I'll let you know. And then he does, and then I say, what do you think it would be useful to talk about? And he's like, it'll emerge. So kind of reinforcing what you've heard a little bit. And it always does emerge, and it's a privilege that I really value. And so that has been my connection here, and I'm very grateful for this intersection of technology and mindfulness. And when I first would tell people about it, technology and mindfulness, they were very confused, like really confused. But now it's not so confusing anymore, and so that's exciting. It's progress. To the question about what's difficult, I think I bring most of myself to work. I feel lucky, and in a sense, like Irene said, as I've gotten older, the difference between me at work and me not at work. Those differences are pretty minimal at this point. And I'd say the one thing I notice is I'm always really curious when, like, if something's stuck and 17 different people have a view on it. I wish I had time to actually understand all of it, and more time for my curiosity and space for understanding the system, and I often don't have time for that. So in that sense, I don't get to authentically explore the full view. Sometimes things just have to get decided and done. But all in all, I feel like I get to show up as me, and I'll take the consequences.
My name is Gopi, and for the last 12 years or so, I worked as a bricklayer in a small internet company called Google, where I had the pleasure, privilege, and honor of working with all these amazing beings, Karen, Irene, and Bradley. And over the 12 years I've been coming to and speaking at Wisdom, it's incredible to see what a big movement it has grown into, led by a small team, and obviously Soren at the helm, and Soren deserves a lot of credit for having this vision. So first of all, let's applaud the 10th anniversary with a big round of cheering for Soren. But what you may not know about the history of Wisdom is there was one person who almost killed it. And in the interest of recognizing, acknowledging, and inclusivity, we should talk about that. And that person was me. Because 11 years ago, Soren came and had lunch with me at Joschka's cafe at Google. His book had just come out, and he said, I'm thinking about organizing this conference, and I want to know what you think. I told Soren, don't do it. I said, these two worlds won't intersect. You'll never get the tech community to sit with the Wisdom people and have a conversation, and you're taking a big risk by booking a whole venue. And so maybe try a small meetup for one afternoon with 20, 30 people and see how it'll all gel. Soren, because he has infinite wisdom, ignored me completely and went ahead and booked the Computer History Museum, 400 seats, and filled every single one. And then he moved it to a bigger venue with 1,000 people, it sold out. Then he moved it to 4,000-person venue, and it sold out. And every year, now it's spread to other cities, London, New York, etc. So the moral of the story is, if you have a great idea you want to execute on, whether it's a company or a venture, please come and talk to me, listen carefully, and do the exact opposite. Because in 10 years, I've come to the humbling realization that in this forum, or when I'm at work at Google, I'm the least wisest person in any room. So my connection to the wisdom tradition started, I was growing up in India, so as I say, I won the ovarian lottery and was born into a culture where these traditions were a big part of our life. So in my teen years, I met my guru who taught me in a traditional way. She taught me how to meditate and put me on a path. And I ran away from home to live in an ashram, the Shivananda ashram, to become a yoga teacher early on. And at that time, the Lululemon yoginis had not taken over the scene. And I say this with great love. It was still, it was still taught by bearded men in orange. But it was a very traditional kind of thing. You had to be, even within the Indian context, you were considered a little eccentric to go pursue this very esoteric path of personal wisdom and practice. But it's morphed to such an extent. So when I arrived at Google, I started a yoga program for the Googlers called Yoglers. It was one class with one product manager with a conference room with just a few chairs moved away. And that program has now grown to more than 250 classes a week. It is the largest yoga program in the world, or one of the largest. And I could not have imagined that this would scale in this fashion. Although along the way, one thing that is troubling me is that as it continues to spread, the movement sort of whitewashes and dilutes the original practice and gets packaged in easy or more broadly acceptable marketing terms like mindfulness, and it moves further and further away from the tradition. So unlike what Bradley said, I am trying hard to push it in that direction. So last Monday when I taught the class, one of the CEOs of the Google member company, she was there. She comes pretty regularly to the Monday yoga class. I actually lit candles. I lit incense. And I played kirtan music. And I said, let's try and keep the tradition as much as possible to its authenticity, and we don't have to be apologetic about it. We don't have to be embarrassed about it. And along those lines, I said something like traditional kirtan singing. Let's give it a try. So we got Krishna Das to come and sing at Google. And that would be my challenge to this community as you look at the next 20 years. We are drawing upon 2,000-year-old traditions, going back all the way up to the birth of Buddha, and keep the original traditions intact. There's a reason they've stayed with us. And as it continues to morph and go into the tech world, there is no reason to dilute it or shy away from the original teachings.
So I think when we were talking about this, we would have time for lots of questions, and I don't think we do. So Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, Irene? What question do you have for
What question do I have? Well, I was reflecting on what this conference means to me and this community. It's one of my favorite conferences that I attend a year. I go to a lot of conferences too. But by the end of the weekend, it always feels like everyone leaves so open-hearted and connected and filled with love in a way that is just, like you don't get the same feeling at any other conference. And one of the things that I think is so special is the community. And every time I see friends from this community, it brings me back to the practice. It brings me back to this place. And so I guess the question I have for each of us to contemplate and for us to reflect on is, like, how do we keep that going within our own personal lives and our communities? How do we cultivate that sense of community within our immediate circles and maybe even extending beyond? I was so inspired by what Michelle has been doing with the National Forest Service and then extending beyond. It's like, how do we cultivate more community and greater connection with each other within the wisdom community and then outside and beyond?
I'm going to just hold that question for a moment. Because I think everybody here is sort of exploring that question, and that's one of the reasons we're called to be here. I think for myself that in the time I was at Facebook, I realized that the thing that I could do that was of greatest service would be to give people tools to better be in connection and relationship with each other. And I'm very grateful that my life partner and Dove shares that same intention and hope. And so kind of beginning the journey of I think for me, the practice has always centered around compassion and community and connection. And I hope to begin a journey which will be a lifetime one of figuring out how to nurture that for the people who would like to have that in their lives.
Irene, I'll share a less theoretical, how about that, super practical tactic that I use. I was in a class probably 10 years ago, and a woman advised writing a thank you note every Friday morning to someone.
Oh, I like that.
Someone who'd done something or someone that you appreciated. And I don't always write a thank you note, but I try on a pretty regular basis either to thank someone or to tell them why I love them, or to reach out to them if I know that they're suffering in like a sentence or a 3-word text, or sending them a heart, or telling someone who might not know what I love about them, why they're special to me. So I try to sort of take some proactive steps around connection to my community, slightly more broadly than my most intimate community. And so far, I've never been rebuffed. So I think it's just sort of trying to acknowledge the humanity that we all experience and recognizing how easy it is just to get busy and not do that. So that's my sort of practical strategy for trying to keep some of that beautiful sensation that we walk away with here on Sunday evenings.
I like that.
Going.
That reminds me that another insight that I had that really inspired me, there was actually a contemplation that asked, what inspires you? And what came up for me, we talk a lot these days about microaggressions in the workplace and things like that. There are also micro-compassions out there. And I love just watching a stranger hold the door open for another stranger, eye contact over an exchange or transaction. Like, if you look around and have an eye for it, there's all this sort of subtext of connection happening in the world as well. And you can tune into that vibration as well. And I think one of the nice things about the wisdom community is it's very inclusive, and the boundaries are fuzzy and sort of ripple out into the world. There's no membership card, like you are now a certified wise guy, or, you know, like whatever level of affiliation you want to have with this group is welcome. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it, that it sort of operates in the same spirit that Soren does everything, which is out of love and inclusivity and welcome.
Micro-kindnesses.
By the way, you know, we invited Soren to join us, and I take the fact that he's not here as complete license to talk about him as much as we want to. He's 10 feet away behind us, so we do need to be careful.
So Arthur, I did want to throw out a question out there. So, you know, given that this conference explores the intersection of technology and wisdom traditions, on the one hand, all of the technologies that have happened in the same period, the last 10 years, has been pretty phenomenal. So if you just look at how humans now navigate, you know, getting from place A to place B. 10 years ago, we did it very differently. Now the fact that the entire map of the world we carry in our pocket, and I could drop you off into Zagreb, Croatia, and you'll find your way around. It's remarkable, the empowerment. And yet, in some levels, on many days I go into work thinking, am I building weapons of mass distraction? And it takes away from attention and human connection. And yet, these wisdom practices have taught me that it is not the fault of the technology. Those are inner things. It is our relationship to it. And how do we reframe the relationship? And how are we going to first start doing that ourselves? And how are we going to then spread it to the rest of, will the world figure this out for itself? Like the way we understood how to establish a relationship with fire over the years. So we can contain it and use it safely, because we've learned that if we are careless with it, as the previous speaker talked about, we could burn a whole city down.
Yeah, I would say that I think I believe that I kind of agree and disagree. I agree from the perspective that we definitely, it's important to be aware of our relationship to technology and work on that, and all of us need to do that. I also, for all of us who have worked or work on those things, I think there's the interesting question to explore about, like, what does the practice of compassion mean in the products that you're building? And in particular, how do we build things in such a way that they bring people closer to each other? And that can be done, and it's, I think, a responsibility of all of us who live in this space.
That's true.
So the question I wondered about, it's not really a question, it's more of a contemplation, is really, over the 10 years since we have been gathering like this, there has been a giant pendulum swing, and it's hard to remember, such a distant memory, but 10 years ago, technology was so optimistic that this was going to be the means by which the world came together and gave people voice and spread opportunity, and it was a time of innocence and naivete and optimism, and now we've seen the pendulum swing all the way to the other side. Where we can see some of the devastating consequences of tech addiction and or fake news and all of these things. And so it's a moment of great pessimism. And sort of being a little bit older, this has been a theme of our talking up here. I'm teaching a class right now to graduate students, and my co-instructor and I realized that they're 25 years old and had never seen an economic downturn, you know, that they had grown up in this sort of up and to the right boom time and have never seen a pendulum swing about what happens when businesses contract and the economy contracts and the change in mood and things like that. And so thinking about that swing of the pendulum, what has come up for me is really, I remain optimistic, and not optimistic that everything's okay now. It's more of a meta-optimism. I remain optimistic that irrespective of whether things are going well or going poorly, as that swings back and forth, that there's something else, something deeper, a frame around all of it. And as you said, I think we will learn together how to get through this as well. So I do think things are very complicated and challenged right now, but I also think we will find our way through it.
So if I may ask in closing, because we're out of time, and ask each of you to weigh in on this. What do each of you think is something that should be nurtured or tended to in order to facilitate that swing back?
I was struck, Arturo, by the founder of All Sides earlier this evening, who shared that visual that we saw of, you know, the same story and what it looked like told from the right, from the left, and from the center. And you could see all at one time 3 different sort of interpretations of the same event. And I thought that's an interesting kind of teaching device to teach perspective taking. And that if we were able to use technology to help people, we're in the bubbles that we're in, but if you use technology to help people recognize it's a perspective, and here are some others, and they're readily available to you, that there was something about that that made me think there's some opportunity for us there in terms of how we can learn and how we can teach more perspective taking, critical thinking, and then connection.
Yeah, I would summarize in one word as simply practice. What I mean by that is we are privileged that the solution for this has already been figured out by other human beings over the years. So the operating manual, they handed it to us through these various lineages and teachings and traditions that exist, whether it's yoga or meditation or chanting or ceremonies. Our responsibility is simply to pick whatever pieces that work for us and practice. So return back to that life raft of a blue mat or your cushion, the life vest of a cushion, and practice.
I think that we've somehow lost the ability to listen to each other. There's a lot of otherizing and kind of digging into this is who I am, my identity, my affiliation. The internet kind of made that able to happen. You know, it's like with GeoCities was the first iteration, and then eventually Facebook. It was like, oh, you could find your tribe, but that tribalism leads to otherism. And so I think the invitation is to find ways to reconnect and listen to each other. I think that when communication is mediated through a screen, it makes it even more possible to dehumanize each other because the voice is now suddenly just text on the screen. We don't see the other person. So I'd like to see how we can kind of cultivate, again, more in-person community, more connection in person, and more listening. I think that's how we get to the other side.
Bradley, can you take us home?
I want to celebrate your work, and I know of no other example that shows how compassion can be married to technology than the work you did while you were at Facebook. And I still admire and find inspiration in that, and it's well documented, fortunately, so it's something you can look up. So I'm very optimistic that it is possible to marry these things, not just in one's personal practice, but in a way that can influence the products and then billions. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a few more announcements, and we want to thank our panelists. Most of them were very early supporters in the beginning, and like any effort, it always takes a village. And now we have a few different announcements. So we're just about to end in about 5 minutes. If you want to sign up for free somatic coaching or body work, after we're done, you can go downstairs into the Yosemite by registration and sign up for that. If you are new to Wisdom 2.0 and want to connect with others who are new, downstairs in Imperial B, which is just past the registration, there will be a meetup for newbies to orient and get to know one another. So if you're new, you don't know any people, that's the place to go. Or if you just want to pretend like you're new and meet other people, that also. And then also, backed by very popular demand, is our Wisdom 2.0 Singles Meetup. Who's single? Who wants to admit that they're single? OK. And if you're single and interested in meeting other singles, my sister, actually, and brother-in-law are going to hang out with you and see, I don't know what's going to happen, actually, to be honest with you. But there's a singles meetup, and you will go there and meet other singles.
And a good story is she did that rogue one year. She's told Soren, I want to do a singles meetup. And he's like, no, I don't think we're going to do a singles meetup. Yeah. So she just went and printed all these signs and put them all over. And
in the bathroom stalls, there was like, join a singles meetup. And she's not even single. She just, it's her thing. But we want to meet all your needs. We're here for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My turn?
Yes.
Tomorrow morning, please join us at 8 a.m. for meditation with Rich Fernandez. If you haven't ever gotten a chance to practice with Rich, there's a wonderful opportunity. There's a practice lounge located at Continental 5. And there's also morning dance with Liz Bliss Esselin. It's going to be good. If you haven't seen the movement room yet,
it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's gorgeous. So beautiful. So go there. And programming will start tomorrow on the main stage here and in the breakout lounge at 9 a.m. And tonight we're going to be having a gathering at the Wisdom Village just behind us to hang out, to greet new people. Go if you're feeling like you have energy for that. And we also really encourage you to check in with yourself and see that what you need is rest and a comfy bed in your hotel room or your home, and honor yourself and do that for yourself if that feels more aligned with your state of mind and heart right now.
Yeah, so you have a number of choices. You can go to the regular meetup and meet and greet just around this wall. You can go to a singles meetup, and you can go to a newbies meetup. And remember to go downstairs and also get your badges if you want to get your badges, either tonight or tomorrow morning. And thank you so much for launching our 10-year opening night.
We love you. Thanks for being
here.
So
appreciate it.